listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Get on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
There's no human being on the planet I'd rather talk to right now than Laura Albanese. Fact. Newsday, excellent, awesome. Does an awesome job across the board. Covering the great medium of sports. I don't know if that's a medium. That's not really a medium, Laura. I apologize. But the most important thing is there's nobody I'd rather talk to right now than you. Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
I am so excited to be on here. I mean, the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast, that is quite the honor.
Oh, wow. Look at you. Well, I'm honored that you're honored. So we have podcasted before on your excellent podcast, and but we also, I think the first time we actually sat down and talked, it was unfortunately in the presence of Evan Drellick. So that was the most unfortunate part of that evening. But we did talk about Hall of Fame stuff, right? And we talked, and you had said this was the first time that you were going to get a chance to vote for the Hall of Fame. And you were really, really excited, and you took it very, very serious. And it was just great, because I don't think people understand. I just like when people like yourself just understand the honor, understand the value, understand the importance, and just understand the whole deal, that it takes a while to get this, right? I mean, 10 years you have to be in this stupid organization. So
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible to me. I especially when I started my first year at Newsday, there was just we were under different ownership, and there were just widespread layoffs. So I am sitting there, year one as a sports reporter. At this point, I wasn't covering baseball full time, and I had always wanted to cover baseball. And I looked at the Hall of Fame, I'm like, that is never happening. No way, no how. And the fact that I got here and am still somehow gainfully employed is incredible. And I did not take the honor lightly.
I want to say you made it.
I did.
But listen, I mean, you not only have a excellent resume, an excellent body of work, but also just an excellent future. I mean, it's just the fact. So this is just a stopping point in terms of appreciating. It's a great milepost, right? It's you're appreciating what you have done, how far you have come, why you're going forward, and you're going to vote for the Hall of Fame for years upon years upon years upon years. Let me ask you this. So when I didn't have the Hall of Fame vote, which is my tale of woe, which I think I told you, it's like, whatever. I don't want to talk about it.
Totally unfair.
Yeah. Anyway, kicked me out of the organization, then came back in, reset my clock. It doesn't matter. But when I didn't have the Hall of Fame vote, I got really offended by the people who did have the Hall of Fame vote, who, let's be honest, were mailing it in. Not literally and figuratively. But it was that you could tell I have no problem, and we're going to go through the Hall of Fame ballot. I have no problem with disagreeing and debating and discussing. But too many times I had seen people have their ballot and go on a radio show and not be able to defend themselves at all. It was either a personal thing or they just thought like this was a good idea, that was a good idea, and it's the eye test or whatever it was. I don't know if you felt the same way, like when you didn't have a vote.
I absolutely did. There were definitely people who and especially before Mariano got inducted, the fact that there were surefire Hall of Famers and there was always one outlier that was I'm not going to vote for that guy because no one should be unanimous. And that would drive me insane.
Yeah.
What else would drive me insane is people were like, well, I'm not going to vote for him this year because he doesn't deserve to be first ballot, but I'm going to vote for him in year 3. And I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense to me at all. And then there were the people who, unfortunately, and I feel like the majority of the electorate
I agree.
takes it seriously. But there are certainly people who are just haven't covered a baseball game in a really long time because they've been grandfathered in. And they would just be like, small hall, big hall, whatever. And it was just like throwing like stuff against a wall. And it was like, who made this ballot? Tell me why and tell me how and tell me immediately.
But it's true and that's the other frustrating thing. And I try not to be that guy who is like holier than thou about, oh, well, you haven't covered baseball in 20 years, but you haven't covered baseball in 20 years. And that's the hard part to get your head around. When someone has established, there's a lot of people either who Laura, they might be out of the industry for years upon years. They might be covering football for the last 20 years. And still they're getting Hall of Fame votes when people like yourself, people like me, like it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Like I didn't have a Hall of Fame vote. And so it wasn't fair, Laura, is what I'm saying. It wasn't.
I agree.
Fair.
It wasn't fair.
No.
No, it was not fair. But I mean, it does make me appreciate the honor more because it does feel like it was a fight to get there. You know, it's not easy to do 10 years of uninterrupted service, if you will. As much as this is the most amazing job in the world, it's still the one where you work nights and the one where you work weekends and you miss weddings and you miss a bunch of family things and you're still working really, really hard. And to be able to kind of have this like little feather in your cap where it's like, oh, I've watched enough baseball to decide who gets enshrined or to help decide who gets enshrined. I'm never going to take that lightly.
So when did you start digging in on it?
Oh, the minute I want to say the minute I got my ballot, probably months before that, the minute that like Baseball Reference had the like, who's going to be up for the Hall of Fame. And I surprised myself actually, because I had a few people in there I didn't expect. There were some on the borderline. I think I came in with the assumption that I would know immediately who I would vote for, but I also didn't want to be lazy about it. So I dove into the stats. I tried to find the things that made the most sense to me. And yeah, now Chase Utley and Andrew Jones are on my ballot. Who knew?
Well, but that's really the incredible thing, because, I can only speak for myself. When I'm looking at it, I'm like, I know who I'm going to vote for. Right. There's no question about it. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Like since my first ballot, there's been some regrets. Like I feel like I actually like did my research and it felt good. And then, well, now this has shifted or that has shifted. And so there's never like, you go into it. What I'm saying is that you go into it, I think that first time and you're so confident, but then to your credit, then you actually, oh my goodness, I got to really dig into it. And there's things when you really dig into it. Chase Utley, perfect example. I cannot yet say who I voted for obvious reasons. But
I can't wait for your reveal, by the way.
Well, this is your payment for coming on the podcast. I'll tell you after.
Okay.
But Chase Utley is a guy who I think if you said to me, oh, Chase Utley, I would have said 3 or 4 years ago, no,
right, absolutely not.
And the guy who I ended up voting for a few years ago was Scott Rowland, who I would have absolutely not voted for, but I couldn't not vote for him off of the comparisons, off the numbers, and I got texts from people who played, said, come on. Well, again, let's open the debate. Let's have the disagreement. Because and real quick, but one of the things that I had dug in on, Laura, maybe I told you this when we were sitting down and talking about this, for position players, because the stats are all over the place in generations, the steroid era and everything else. I had looked at top 10, top 15 MVP voting, how many times they finished there, and as a jumping off point. And my reasoning was, well, it shows the dominance at that time in that era. If you're in the top 10 in MVP voting, you have had a dominant year. So that one for me was a jumping off point. But flash forward when I vote for Scott Rowland, well, he doesn't fit that criteria. What a hypocrite I am. So I don't know. I'm all over the place.
It's actually interesting because someone asked me yesterday, because obviously the way that Newsday rolls it out, they rolled out we have 8 people who are eligible to vote. So we rolled out all 8 at the same time. But because it was my first year, I wrote a column on my personal selections. And a person in my mentions were an absolute dumpster fire yesterday, which is totally fine. Was like, would you reconsider next year? Or are you the type of person where, oh, I voted for this guy this year, I'm definitely going to vote for him next year. I didn't vote for him last year, I'm not going to vote for him. And I think what's important is for me, well, personally, like this is different for everybody, but I think I'm going to go into every year that I have eligibility to vote with a blank slate. And I'm not going to be like, oh, just because I said something one year, it's going to carry over necessarily the next year, because perspectives can shift. I have been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. And I take this honor so seriously and I esteem it so much that I would rather be wrong than have the wrong selections. So who knows? Like, okay, this is my ballot this year. It might be different next year. I don't know.
It's a great, I applaud you. It's a great perspective, and not one a lot of times people are really, really dug in. They're really dug in.
Yeah.
And we see it, Mr. Tibbs, not Mr. Tibbs, who obviously does a great job at tracking this. Although I wish he just stayed on Twitter, because I mean, I went to Blue Sky.
Yeah, it's on Blue Sky.
Yeah, it's just exhausting. I go back and forth.
It's so tiring.
Isn't it? Like, it's like this is a whole nother conversation, but I'm just like, I get it. I don't want to be left behind by not joining Blue Sky, much like I didn't want to be left behind for the 2 hours at Threads or something. You know,
Right.
it's right. But you can't be left behind. But now I get the sense that everyone's sort of like, okay, I'm just going back to Twitter. I don't know. So
Yeah, it's Twitter fatigue, and Twitter doesn't even exist. So
yeah, yeah. But anyway, he does an excellent. I love not Mr. Tibbs, and the whole team he has of the work they do. But you see, he tracks it of like adds, subtractions, and you know, again, going back 5 years ago, I'm like, how dare you subtract? How dare you add?
right.
And I think that your perspective is a great one. You just have to go in every year, and just accept that, hey, my mind changed or whatever it
Right.
was, you know?
Well, I think like Billy Wagner is a good representation of this, just because of the way that we're shifting how we value relief pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when he first was on the ballot, you look at Billy Wagner and you're like, probably not. But then you see, hey, of the 89 pitchers enshrined in Cooperstown, only 7 are relievers. And that's not if you don't count like Eckersley and John Smoltz, who were starters for part of their career. And then you have to be like, okay, we're not really valuing a position that in the current baseball era is extremely important. And so maybe, yeah, 10 years ago, you don't vote Billy Wagner. But as you understand and really comprehend, like, the value of closers, the value of relievers, how bullpens are used, and how that shaped the way that bullpens essentially took over this major aspect of the sport, suddenly Billy Wagner, in my mind, has a very compelling Hall of Fame case.
Yeah, it's a great point. And a lot of guys back who have aged out of this should be in the Hall of Fame because of exactly what you talked about. And it's unfortunate for them. And I understand it, you can get veterans, whatever they call it, veterans committee, whatever it is, like they can get in fine. But still, we were talking with Alex Cora on the podcast yesterday, and at the end of it, we just had to bring up Pedroia just to shit talk, and so, but he had mentioned Brian McCann. He's like, oh, I saw something about his framing. I'm like, that's where we're at. Like, that's where we're at. We're at with the framing. And I'm not crapping on Brian McCann, but the point is that you take a guy like Dwight Evans, who if people valued WAR like they do now with Dwight Evans, he would be in the Hall of Fame, but they didn't. And now we're valuing, framing. And Roland was another guy. Roland was like this. Roland, for me, really got in because of WAR. It was because I think he had a 70 WAR, and no other player with that level of WAR wasn't in.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, I think those are valuable arguments to be made, and it it is up to the voter to decide how much something like war, especially something like defensive war, which can be kind of finicky, or defensive runs saved, or all those things. How do they actually matter, and how much value do you put in them? Because for a long time, a lot of the Hall of Fame was mostly offensive numbers.
yeah, yep, yeah, and there's guys, and so I'm anxious to get your take on this because there are definitely guys. You clearly have done your research. I don't have a. I'll just say it. Like, I don't have a problem with any of your votes, Laura. Like, I don't have a problem. Like,
It's okay.
I
No,
respect,
it's okay.
I would, if I was on the radio right now, I'd say it's your prerogative to be wrong. But no, it's your prerogative to be right. You're right. I agree with the vast majority of. So you have voted for 6.
Right.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to name the people that you voted for, and I'm going to say, was this a tough decision for you?
Okay.
We'll start there.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but it's the way we're going to do it.
Let's go.
All right. Carlos Beltran.
Not a tough decision for me, no.
Okay. You knew, so when you went into it, and you obviously now you start digging in on it, but when you first went into it, if you just had the ballot, would you have said Carlos Beltran?
I would have said Carlos Beltran. And partially, people look at it like, well, the Astros sign stealing scandal. I felt like his actual production on the field warranted already Hall of Fame induction. But I also strongly believe, and I've written about this a number of times, that he was used as a scapegoat in the Astros sign stealing scandal simply because he was the one player who was retired. And the Players Association was protecting everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So he was named in the commissioner's report, and no other player was because his career ended.
Mm.
So I don't necessarily, if you're gonna omit Carlos Beltran because of the sign stealing scandal, I feel like that's a false narrative. It's not something I can really hang my hat on.
Well, flash forward to whatever year, 10 years from now, Jose Altuve. Are we not going to vote Jose Altuve in?
I mean, we're gonna vote Jose Altuve.
We're gonna,
so,
right?
No, right.
Yeah.
So how do you keep out Carlos Beltran, who prior to that had a pretty immaculate kind of career in terms of character and in terms of ability? So for me, I am careful with the character clause. I feel like it should only be deployed in extreme times.
Okay. All right. Number 2, we're going alphabetical because that's how the ballot is. They're so smart. They think of everything. Andrew Jones.
This one was a tough one for me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Mostly because of his precipitous decline towards the end. He had some off the field issues that occurred after his retirement, where he pled guilty to domestic battery, which for me, that definitely ticks the character clause, but it was also after he retired. So it was something I struggled with. In terms of ability, the reason I picked Andrew Jones is because, simply speaking, he was the best defensive center fielder I had ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the metrics, he is also the best defensive center fielder of all time. He was the type of guy when I watched him and something was hit, even in the general vicinity of him, the routes he took, his awareness, his ability to just field that position, in addition to his offensive prowess, was the type of guy that made you go, whew.
He's a Hall of Famer. I mean, you had the you just had the reaction of, that's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, you go, oh, okay. Yeah. And anytime a player makes you go, oh, okay, that's a Hall of Famer.
All right. I like, but that's an important thing. Much like when I say I'm starting with the top 10 MVP votes, like there is an element, another thing that we should start with, which is, I remember watching that guy play. He seemed like a Hall of Famer to me.
Andrew Jones in center field is so deeply emblazed in my mind. That is how incredible he was. And I'm sure plenty of people know that, but there's also a younger generation who just does not realize, when you talk about like a black hole at Turner Field, that was a black hole in the outfield.
Yeah. And he also did plenty offensively. Like you said, it's like Gary Pettis isn't in the Hall of Fame. He was an incredible defensive player, but Andrew Jones was also a very, very, very good offensive player as well.
Very good. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was not a one-dimensional player by any stretch of the imagination. He was part of those incredible Braves teams, and bolstered by that great pitching staff. It was just all in all, like, I think he needs to be in.
All right, next up, you can, if anyone who has a ballot in front of them, they can see all the people that they skipped because we're going alphabetical order. CC Sabathia.
That one was easy for me. And one of the reasons it's easy for me because CC was like a little bit of a throwback where I feel like he's one of the last few pitchers who are going to have the counting stats that we generally associate with starting pitching. But with him too, I love how he matured throughout his career. So you have this Cy Young Award winner, you have this fire throwing lefty, and his body starts to betray him, as all bodies do. And he adapts and he gets better and he mentors the people around him. And he finds way to help Black and brown kids get into baseball in a time when a lot of Black and brown kids aren't getting into baseball. The fact that he was so proactive in his community, and frankly, while he got a lot of flack for it, the fact that he decided to check into rehab before that wild card game because he put his family first, I think was incredible. The fact that he lost out on a major incentive because he was trying to protect he was trying to protect his guys. I think he threw it a player or something like that. And he was like on an innings incentive. He lost $500,000. That's incredible. He was the sort of clubhouse presence that you can truly build a team around. And there are a few players I admire more.
A lot of this stuff, along with being a really, really good pitcher, you would mention, the other part of this. And we focus so much on the character clause in a negative way. Like
Right.
this talk focus on the character clause in a positive way. The character. And there's guys on the ballot who I think do get a step forward in my mind because of exactly what you're talking about. Because this is what we want, ideally, baseball players to be, right? Human beings to be. It's not always that way. We know that.
It's a lot of times it isn't.
No.
So I'm like,
Well, let's give him credit. Let's give credit to some of the people who are, right?
why not? He's a great pitcher. He has the counting stats, and oh no, he happens to be a good person. Check.
Yeah. There you go. I like that. All right. Next one, Ichiro. Right.
Oh, slam dunk. Layup.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
whatever.
here's my question about Ichiro. What percentage do you think he gets?
He should be unanimous.
Yes.
And anyone who does not vote for him, I would like to see a double-spaced 5,000 word essay on your reasoning why Ichiro is not on your Hall of Fame ballot. I want it to be collated. I want it to be laminated. I'm going to need that on my desk, please.
You aren't alone. And I am totally with you. Do not give me, hey, you can't be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You can't be that guy.
Please.
I mean, I understand what Ichiro was. And this, again, if we're going to come back to, not only was he an absolutely unbelievably great player for a long, long time, but what he also did for the game of baseball, right?
God. Does Shohei exist without Ichiro?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
no. Well, no. I mean, it's and all you need to know is how revered he is among those guys. They know this. So
yeah. And I got to watch the tail end of his career when he was on the Yankees, and just seeing him prepare every day. I mean, yes, Ichiro has preternatural talent and he's incredible, but he was still had an aging body, and he was foam rolling himself on the floor, and he was getting himself ready, and he was very, very much dialed in no matter what the situation was. And he's a surefire Hall of Famer, but he was also so much fun to watch. And I do think that's part of it. Baseball is still an entertainment business, and how are you not entertained by Ichiro?
He's still fun to watch. He's like 50 whatever years old, so it's.
Wasn't he pitching against like a girls' team? I saw that on Twitter.
Yeah, and the things he did about
he got so mad when someone got a hit on him.
This is put it this way, Ichiro could absolutely have made a living on TikTok or Instagram just by doing trick stuff, right? Like here's a ping pong ball on a cone 500 yards away each row, knock it off, So
100%. And alas, TikTok wasn't around back then.
I
but
know.
instead
Well,
he entertained us.
Yeah. Thank you, Ichiro.
Thank you.
Your payment is that you're going to get in the Hall of Fame, even though you aren't a TikTok star. Who is going to be the first TikTok star in the Hall of Fame? I don't even.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But before we go to the last two.
Oh, Joey Votto will be a TikTok star and Hall of Famer.
That's true. One of the things that's interesting is that I call this like the Burt Blyleven continuum, which is, and I've told guys this. I said, listen, you want to get in the Hall of Fame, you just stay out there just long enough. Just stay. So what Burt Blyleven did, every single year that the Hall of Fame came up and he didn't get in, he would be going on the radio show saying, I don't care about that. I don't care. Like, let them be wrong. Like, I don't care. But you heard him all the time. And then, by the way, I was this and I was that and I was this and that. And there is definitely that element of if you play it right publicly, like you can help your cause. And I just thought of it because of TikTok, but
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people can be convinced. It goes back to like the previous point of you can reassess your opinions. That's actually the best possible way to show growth. So as baseball writers, sure, let's reassess.
Yeah. And if it happens to be like my addiction to TikTok, who knows? I don't have an addiction to TikTok.
No, you just have like a slight, preference for it.
No. I will say this is that we talk about my Hall of Fame ballot reveal. One thing that I was contemplating, we had talked about certain ideas, but I didn't mention this one when we were talking about it, was when I got my baseballs and boring tattoo, I was like, hey, do you have 15 more minutes to just like put my Hall of Fame ballot on my back in a tattoo?
I think that takes more than 15 minutes.
I know, but if it's fake, I don't know. Like, I don't know. That was the problem. I was already there for 6 hours. I didn't want to, Mr. Cartoons.
You can get one of those temporary ones.
Yeah, but still, I felt like the fact that this tattoo artist was already who only does Eminem and Beyonce and everything else was having to spend time on me didn't seem like. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you.
Well, it was very nice that you and Joe Kelly got matching tattoos. That's super cool.
I mean, who doesn't have matching tattoos with Joe Kelly?
Who, right? Yeah. Who among us?
I've no one with the Yankees. Brian Cashman isn't getting tattoos with Joe Kelly.
I mean, do we know that for sure?
Maybe they should make a bet. I love bets. So, yeah. If the Yankees fielding percentage goes up in the postseason next year, then Joe Kelly will have to get a face of Brian Cashman on his back.
Oh, that would be beautiful.
Yeah, it would be. Actually, stunning. But even though, like, obviously, like Joe owns the LLC to this, whatever. He's the chairman. He's whatever you want to classify him as. Brian Cashman was nice enough to hold up a baseballs and boring shirt. So there we go. I feel like I'm bringing worlds together.
You really are. You're essentially an ambassador.
I would have dropped like a Jimmy Carter reference here, but I would totally have aged nobody would have understood what I said. All right. Okay. Here we go. This one is a good one. Here we go. Chase Utley.
Chase Utley. Okay, so this one actually
Chase Utley. ...
I don't know if I made the right decision. I think I did. He was my very, very, very borderline case. And already people were like, oh, Laura, you're a small hall girl. I'm not I picked who I picked.
Yeah.
But Chase Utley was interesting. I actually had jotted it down because I had been fighting for my life for Chase Utley, who was like, I literally saw break Ruben Tejada's leg in front of my own eyes. So it wasn't like, oh, I love Chase Utley.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of being just like Mike Trout says that he's his favorite hitter, in terms of like all time, in terms of like the way that he approached because of his baseball IQ. So I'm already listening to Mike Trout, who's an extremely smart person, but I had no idea just how good he was defensively. So he is only one of 21 players at any position to accumulate more than 100 defensive runs saved, which is 122 actually, which is insane because he started so late in life. And by Hall of Fame standards, I think he had 14 seasons. It's a shorter period of time. His peak with the Phillies was incredible. His ability to get on base, his speed, he was just like this all-around phenomenal player. And I think sometimes when you're good at everything, it's easy to kind of underestimate you because he was a great runner, he was a great defender, had great bat to ball skills, he could hit for power, he did all these things incredibly. And I was looking at his FOR is 64.5, which is basically as high or around every other second baseman. He's one of the top, I would say, 12 second basemen baseball has ever seen. And if that doesn't get you into the Hall of Fame, I don't know what doesn't.
The one, so it's always for people, a lot of times it's, well, I didn't vote for this guy, so I can't vote for this guy.
Right.
With Utley, there's a lot of Jeff Kent, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of, well,
which I think Jeff Kent should be in.
Right.
So,
but he's off, right? He's off. He's off. So, and you can't, to come back to your very accurate way of thinking, you can't think that way. You can't be like, oh, well, I didn't do this, so I can't do that. Don't say I can't do that. You can do anything you want. Right?
We're not going to get in trouble. Don't double down on a mistake.
No, as long as, and this is the great thing, is that you do an excellent job of explaining this. This is do an excellent job. This is why we're having this conversation. And that's what's great about this. We talked about this. Everyone gets so worked up. Not everyone. I take that back. A lot of people get so worked up over this whole process.
Right.
It's great, man. Like, it's great. It's a great time of year typically to do it, although baseball's ruined it because now they're making trades and signing guys. It used to be like everything was done. We can just talk about this.
Right. Now we do free agents well until like March.
Yeah, it stinks. Like, just let the Hall of Fame have the Hall of Fame.
Right.
But this is it's such a great thing to talk about, which is like why I love talking about it with you and with everybody. But there's no definitive right answers. There's no. But as long as you can make a case other than saying, no, I didn't feel like it, I didn't like the guy, which, by the way, there's guys like that. Like,
I didn't necessarily like Chase Utley.
Yeah.
I voted for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not personal when it comes to stuff like that, which is like, I feel like a lot of people didn't vote for Barry Bonds, other than the steroid issue. People were coming around towards the end. But I honestly feel like some of it was the fact that Barry Bonds was not likable to a lot of people that covered him. And I think that kind of swayed public perception when it came to voting.
Well, I think, Laura, a few years ago, Schilling is the preeminent example of this, where Schilling literally, I think, this is my opinion, if he doesn't say, I don't want people to vote for me, like that last year,
was it.
He had one more year. I think he would have been in. Like, he would have been in. He was trending that way. And once he says that, people are like, well, screw you. I didn't. I voted for him, but yeah.
We're humans, we and especially writers. I mean, we have egos. So if someone's like, I don't want to be there, then okay, you don't get to be there. Like, okay.
All right. Well, in the last one, as a guy who I do think is going to get in this year, and I'm really, really happy he will, is Billy Wagner. You mentioned him before.
I have been on the Billy Wagner bandwagon since the beginning. Again, I think he was like 3 or 4 votes shy. So, hi, I'm an extra vote because this is my first year. But just an incredible left-handed reliever. If you look at his stats, and I know people are like, well, he was never like, he didn't reach all these milestones or whatever else. We're talking about closers. It's a completely different category. So like he has a better ERA plus than anyone other than Mariano Rivera in terms of relievers. He struck out 1/3 of the batters he faced. And his 11.9 K per 9 is the best among qualified pitchers, any pitcher. This is the left-handed reliever of our generation, the guy that essentially helped create the mold of the firefighter who comes into the ninth inning and closes the door. I look at Billy Wagner, and yes, he didn't reach a lot of those milestones, but he is iconic in what he did. And if he does not get in this year, so help me, I am going to be so upset.
He'll get in. He'll get in.
He better.
And I love he's come on the podcast a couple times, and I love the fact that he makes no bones about it, like how important it is, but not in an obnoxious way. Like it's just like he just said it would mean so much to me. It would mean the world, and because some of these guys play it off, but and it's not like he's doing a campaign. Say, hey, if you want to talk about it, I'll tell you how much I want to be in, and
he deserves it.
Yeah, and Laura, like one of the things, so we see these websites about the pros and the cons, and I would encourage everyone to go to Cooperstown Cred. I mean, it's a great
Mm-hmm.
website to look at this stuff. But one of the things they say, well, you look at the hitters. A lot of times he wasn't facing not a lot. He wasn't facing good hitters in the ninth inning. He was always pitching in the ninth inning. His saves were against bad hitters. His saves were against
Oh, please! He was pitching in the steroid era, and he was like 5'10".
I know. Well, I would also say this, and I'm going to use this off of something Billy Wagner. I remember him telling me when he came to the Red Sox, he had to pitch behind Papelbon, and he had to pitch the eighth inning, and he said this. Pitching in the ninth inning is totally different. I've never forgotten this. Pitching in the ninth inning is totally different. It's totally different because the hitters are approaching you differently. Everything's different. The pressure's different. Doesn't matter who you're facing. It is the last 3 outs of a game, of a win. It is totally different. And something has to be valued when it comes to that, I think. I've never forgotten that.
I fully agree with that. I mean, when you think about the internal fortitude it takes to walk out there in front of 40, 50,000 people, knowing that every single one of your pitches could be the difference between a win or a loss in a way that maybe, as much as the offense has, factors in, as much as the starting pitcher factors in, every once in a while, when you're a closer, I mean, that's it. It's you.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to relievers are not correctly valued in the Hall of Fame, and it's time to change that.
Yeah. Well, the last thing, Laura, I want to know who was the toughest one to leave off.
Oh God, who was the toughest one? Shoot.
So I'll help you here. So the steroid guys are off the table.
That was the steroid. Actually, the steroid guys were hard for me because growing up as a kid in the early 2000s, I couldn't envision a world where Manny Ramirez and A-Rod are not in Cooperstown. And it made me a little bit sad to not be able to tick off their names. So I think the 3 that I keep looking back are Andy Pettitte, King Felix, and Bobby Abreu.
Mm-hmm.
And these are guys that, it's just like, I hate to be the person to be like, it's not the Hall of Very Good, but they're right on the borderline for me.
All kind of different too. In
different ways.
Like Felix was so dominant. Like he's so dominant, then he just fell off a cliff.
Right.
Where, obviously Pettitte was a lot longer. Abreu was sort of the same thing. But yeah.
And honestly, and again, it goes back to you vote for the people who you think should be in. But I do not think David Wright should be kicked off the first year. But I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. So I kind of had to war with that kind of idea of just like, don't just vote for him because you don't think, he should be one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I got to watch so much of his career and I saw how much he meant to that franchise. And a lot of the times, I always go back to the MVP debate. What's an MVP? Is it the most valuable player in terms of the best player or the player that means the most to his team? And I'm like, what's a Hall of Famer? Is it the guy who gets all these stats or the player that meant everything to a franchise? And if you go by those metrics, David Wright kind of falls into that, even though he just does not have anywhere close to the stats to merit it because he got hurt. If he hadn't gotten hurt, he would be a Hall of Famer.
Which is, David Wright and Pedroia, very similar in that respect.
Very similar.
Yeah.
So those are more kind of like emotional. Oh, this is tough, but I know what the right decision is.
Yeah. And again, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for voting either of those guys. And but I will begrudge someone who says, "Oh, well, I'm buddies with the guy, and I told him I give him a Hall of Fame vote." Like that's, and I mean, you go down the list, and every year there's a few of these guys, and like for instance, I'm gonna try to identify one, and this is no knock to anybody. I mean, when you're on the ballot, like I don't know, Ian Kinsler,
Yeah, like who's voting for
Russell
Ian?
Martin. I saw that someone voted for Russell Martin. Like, okay, again, I want the
Yeah, give me
Three-ring
the
binder.
5-page,
yeah, yeah.
5-page double spaced.
Yeah. So anyway, again, no wrong answers. All right. Well, listen, you explain yourself. You did a good job. You did a
Thanks.
good job. No, you did good. You must feel good though. You must be good. When you got the ballot, that was something, right? You got it in the mail.
That was incredible.
Yeah.
Getting the ballot was incredible. Sending it out, it's interesting. People will make fun of you and they'll be like, "Oh, it's not like this is your entire livelihood. Why are you having such a tough time with it?" But I take it so seriously. I love the Hall of Fame so much. I love baseball so much. So when I sent it out, as I was like kind of, because it's a paper ballot that you mail.
Yeah, I mean that was the other thing. It's like, well, thank you, Hall of Fame. They give you the postage, like that you don't have to pay for the postage. Thank you. But so real quick, I will say this: I mailed my ballot on the morning. I had to do a radio show at 6 a.m. So 6 to 10 on December 31st, and I was worried that I was going to be so tired I was going to forget. So yeah. I at 4:45 a.m. I went to the local post office, tried to figure out how to use the post office box, which I don't remember the last time I used it. I'm like, why isn't this working? So I'm sitting there at 4:45 a.m.
They're just like,
it's like now it's like a secure thing, and so at 4:45 a.m. on December 31st, but I'm still paranoid. I'm paranoid about. I took a picture of it, so it's kind of sort of like voting for the MVP or Cy Young and everything. Like you think, did I do that right? Did I check the wrong box? I'm paranoid about that. I'm paranoid that it's going to be mailed on time. And the other day, they actually sent an email. We got it. I'm like, oh, thank you. Good.
Oh, forget this. When everyone got their confirmation email that they were eligible to vote, I did not get one, and I lost. I didn't lose it, but I was like sitting there. I was like walking around Manhattan because I had errands to. And I just sit down on a ledge and I am texting every single one of my coworkers. And I'm like, did you get the email? And they're like, yeah. Did you get the email? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, where is my email? So I was like, no, this can't be. And eventually it turned out to be like some sort of clerical error or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I eventually, they either forgot to send it or it was like filtered to my spam folder. But that was a solid couple hours of existential crises.
It's funny as we're talking, like I got paranoid again. So I took a picture of my ballot and I'm thinking, spoiler alert, I voted for Ichiro, right? Right? But think about this. What if I forgot to check Ichiro and then you were the one guy?
You're the guy. And then you have to be like,
but I didn't. I checked him. Yeah.
I can't wait to see who the one guy who doesn't vote for Ichiro is.
There's gonna be someone. I guarantee you. Yeah, because it's not at the level. There will be.
There will be, and I can't wait. I can't wait to read the nonsensical column defending this.
But that's the best. That's the fun. I mean, some of these ballots are, and like people who I like. That's the thing I feel bad. Like I know, without naming names, I know some of the people who I really like have stupid ballots. Like not stupid, like I disagree. Like stupid. Right. What are you doing? Like what
why?
Are you doing? Yeah, why? Yeah.
I will only vote for Ian Kinsler and no one else.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Well, let me clip that. That is Laura says no.
There we go. I have only voted for Ian Kinsler.
I was going to talk to you about I don't even know what to say about the Mets. Whatever.
It is what it is. The Mets are, they're going to be interesting.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
You're just like, get me through the off season. Now, you're a spring training? You go to spring training?
I haven't heard yet, but probably not.
Okay.
I have been petitioning, and so I'm going to do it on a podcast now. I have been petitioning my editor to go for a couple weeks because I just think it's invaluable.
It is invaluable. It's the best. It's the best. Well, we'll get. What's your editor's name?
Hank Winicky. Hank Winicky, please send me to spring training.
Hank Winicky. I'll clip that. Hank Winicky, I concur. I think that absolutely. You earned it. You've had a great year. You've done a great job, and it's culminating not in this podcast, but in your Hall of Fame ballot.
Oh, definitely this podcast. Also the Hall of Fame ballot.
Well, I appreciate it. All right.